And the mission of the company of Richard is, if you got something great to say it, we'll find a great way to say it, which really says it all. I'm really looking forward to hearing more about storytelling and your vision on that. So the floor is yours, Richard.
There is a moment just before you speak. There is a moment just before you communicate an idea that if you rush into it, you'll miss it. And this moment is so scary, but it's so exciting at the same time. And it's all about the concept of trying to communicate something to a group of people. We take it for granted every day, that ability to say hello, share an idea. But when you pause, a challenge to get what's in your head into other people's heads. And not only that, but to influence their behaviours. So for me, that moment is a bit like this. It's like I'm an admiral of a huge fleet of ships about to set sail. And I'm walking the deck thinking, how do I get these ships across this ocean with all these ideas and safely deliver them to people at the other side, in other lands who don't speak my language, who've got different thoughts and have learnt different things? And if I say the wrong thing, maybe they'll misinterpret it. Maybe it will mean something different to them than it means to me. And that's what's terrifying about it. Sitting there at the top of this big ship, with all these other ships setting sail to this land, thinking, how do I share ideas? And you have exactly the same dilemma in all you do, whether it's actually internally in presentations to colleagues, to senior people, or whether you're communicating externally. You're trying to share an idea. So have that little pause before we set sail on any communication. So I'm going to cover in this talk 4 things. Briefly, I'm just going to touch upon the power of stories. I believe they're immensely powerful in our lives generally, not just in terms of communications. So I just want to give you some sort of extreme conversations about that. I'm going to do 10 reasons why they are so powerful. I did this at CASE last year, and for those people who asked me along, I guess I owed it to them to share those 10 thoughts again. But what I've put most is why we don't use stories more. Because I can share with you the powerful reasons. I can bring to life all the wonders that stories have. But why, when we get to work, do we not do it? When we meet people in the streets or friends, we're chatting about stories, we're sharing ideas. But when we start and do our job, we sort of forget. And I've tried to come up with a solution, because I figure that's the best thing I can give you, is trying to give you some advice, some way of understanding how you can then communicate through stories. So that's the biggest part. That's my sort of key learning that I'd like you to take away from this session. I'm going to look at some examples. I've gone through everybody's websites. I've looked at every one of it. Everybody on the list, I've looked at your websites. Those that are just in Dutch, I just had to pass. I thought, I can't. But there are some that are in English, and I've pulled them up just to share, and we can reflect upon what's out there. You know, what are our styles? Because at the heart of this, what I'm going to share with you is that we have 3 distinct styles of communicating. One's a very literal style. The other is a metaphorical style, and the third is a narrative. And we tend to go down one particular route. We have a tendency, like any sort of thinking model, any behavior, when we come to work. But yet when we're sociable, when we're engaging, when we're inspiring, then we'll go to... I want to show you that there is something in between just being narrative-based, storytelling-based, and literal. There are actually, in my mind at least, 3 levels. So that's what I want to share with you. And I guess it's this whole concept of it's not just for bedtime. But bizarrely, I was going to show a picture, but that would be just too cruel. So they had lots of magazines for me to read, but just by my bed was this lovely little book called Quality Stories, which I thought maybe somebody had planted it there, you know, because they say, yes, they are just for bedtime. But just the title, and I hope you'll see from my conversations, just the title, Stories, people are intrigued by that word. You just want to pick it up and look. So I hope you enjoy it. Please ask questions. We're not a huge group, so if I speak too quickly, and I'm trying to speak slower than I normally do, but if there are any questions, please just raise your hands. I'll try and time it so we've got some questions at the end as well to go through it. It is for you to learn. It's not for me just to sort of send out my thoughts. But anyway, hope you enjoy it. Okay. First of all, stories are to me, the thing that sets us all apart, that is our creativity. Because without thinking out of the box, without thinking out of this moment, the what-if questions, those stories that run in your mind, and these are thoughts. And you'll see as I go through this, when I talk about stories, stories aren't necessarily a beginning, middle, and end with a character. For me, stories are about a narrative, a flowing thought, an endless thought, something that just ignites at a moment and then just runs through your mind. But we spend 50% of our lives not in the present moment, thinking about something. Now that could be, have I said too much already? Am I talking too much? Oh, when I stood there quietly, what's he doing? What's that all about? You would have played little stories in your mind while I stood there with my eyes closed, thinking, how long is he going to go on? We can't help it. We are meaning makers. We learn to make meaning. We tell ourselves stories. So they're so natural, so part of us. And they are the fundamental thing that gives us all our innovation, all our ability to think, is the stories. But they also, science is now showing, create our greatest unhappiness. The main root cause of our unhappiness, is our minds. Oh, she doesn't like me. Oh, they're talking about me again in the office. Oh, these thoughts that just aren't necessarily real, but they're stories that you build up. And research has shown that people who have a wandering mind, a creative mind, actually aren't as happy as those people who are focused here and now. Creativity is like this amazing gift, but it's a huge burden. You know, it's a price you pay. If you're able to, there's a whole technique. Has anyone come across the concept of mindfulness now? Yeah? It's to do with meditation. It's to do with standing away from those stories, from those thoughts, and realize you're not part of them. But they're hugely part of our entire lives. They're incredibly powerful, but they're incredibly negative if we let them run away from ourselves. And as I said at the beginning, they are the most powerful way to communicate a concept. Yep. Movies, stories, they're powerful. But we can't put everything into a movie. And as I say, talking about narrative, talking about storytelling, isn't just about making a movie, doing a big drama. I mean, there are techniques, and I won't go into these now fully, but there are techniques for how to build a story. So you have a key person, an objective that they're looking to do, there's barriers that they overcome, and they find new learning. That's a fundamental element to most stories. You try and achieve an objective, but you find a greater outcome by overcoming barriers. And narratives are based upon that time and time again. But I'm going to talk to you about narratives that can just be about a single word or a picture that can spark the mind. Now, research is also showing that in advertising and in marketing and in communications like that, what people actually want now is to listen to a story. They're getting tired of just being sold a direct message. They want to be engaged. They want more from that information. And I'm going to put that out to you, that actually students and partners want more from a university than just information. They want to be engaged by things. They want to feel things. So, the 10 reasons And this is all, by the way, available. I think they're even filming this. So this is all available on the internet. I don't normally allow that to go out, but in this instance. And as I say, I have made this specially for you. For the last several months, I've been trying to work this out, thinking, what value can I really give? So this is part of all of that. So our brains inherently love stories. They love hearing them and they love telling them. Yeah? Because we have this little mechanism in there that goes, ooh, a little reward system that feeds back pleasure. Yeah? I mean, that's how we've managed to evolve, things that our reward system in our brain. Stories are one of them. People feel good about hearing stories and they feel good about telling stories. Especially if you ask somebody about their own story, you'll see their faces beam and light up as they tell and share that story. 65% of all our communication, and this is on average, I have friends who it's almost like 99% of their entire communication from hello is a story. Oh, gosh, hello, Richard. Do you know the last time? Da, 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 da. On and on it goes, story after story after story. And they are so important because they're how we share ideas. Yeah? They're how we share new thinking, how we connect people, how we resolve conflicts. You can use stories in conflict management. Well, if you were this person, how would we do this? So they're incredibly powerful in many dynamics in terms of organizations. And they're really useful for memory. Now, you've all been party to how you develop your memory. And as somebody who's got a terrible memory, I've looked at most of these techniques. But the fundamental principle is this ability to build a narrative and to associate key learnings with steps along a journey. Now, there's some tests that are done with young children, and this is an example of one of those, where they give them 2 cards. There's 20-some cards in a deck, and they just pair up 2 cards and ask them to remember the pair. After an hour or so, they come back, and then they say, right, what went with the soap? So out of the 20-some, I think it's 20, how many do you think they got? I told you. No, if I tell you stories about that, if I tell you things, then you might start to believe it. We have a reward system, so not only have I enjoyed being told, I'm going to enjoy telling it. I'm going to enjoy passing it on. The whole advocates. If you get an alumni, and that alumni has a lovely story, and they can remember that story, they will share that story, and they will pass it on. And they will then move it around, and they will recall it, and they may even adopt it as part of their identity and persona. Okay. Now, I could go on, and I could carry on, and I could have made the whole presentation around the power of stories and why they are so powerful. And you would have walked away, and maybe you might have just said, that was really interesting, Richard. Yes, stories are so powerful. But my slight frustration, I find, is that then people don't do anything about it. It's like we're going to rush back and go, right, now, then I thought to myself, well, why? Is that because you're not storytellers? And I thought, well, no, you all are. I've met an awful lot of you, and you will all tell me stories, and you'll all share stuff with me. So I think, no, that's not true. And then you'll say to me, and then I'll think to myself, well, is it because, for some reason, they think stories are just this? And I thought, oh, maybe that's it. Maybe they just think stories are case studies. Yep. Stories are literally, if I'm going to do stories, the only story I know is the fact that, okay, I've got to put a case up there. This is a student, they came here, we did that. That is part of it. But it's not the only way to tell stories and engage in that level. So I sat down and I thought, right, for this to be real value, I need to be able to crack this nut. I need to be able to, for you guys to walk away and go, right, I've got some ammunition to how to start telling stories. So this is what this section's all about. I have this slide because this is how I feel we generally communicate most of the time. What I call SOS, sending out stuff. And that's the polite version. Yes, sending out stuff. We throw it out there. Yeah? Go on, lots of it, lots of it. The more we do, the bigger the budget, the more we'll throw out. And hopefully someone will catch it as it comes tickering down and lands on us and, oh, what was that in my hair? Oh, yes. All right. Oh, you've got an alumni conference. Oh, I'll come to that. Yes. And we're doing this as marketeers. Now, we'll all sit there and go, oh, no, I'm far more strategic than that. You'd never catch me as doing that at all. But unfortunately, we all do it. And it is part... Anyway, I'm going to show you why and stuff like that. I'm not saying you're all like him, and I'm not saying I'm all like him. But we do resort to factual statements. And what's interesting, because I work across not just the educational sector, but other organisations, corporate organisations. And there is this real... As soon as I walk into an institution that's intelligent, be it a biomedical institution, a financial institution, an higher educational institution, if they're intelligent people, I go, oh. And my body language changes. And I just despair. And I think, no. How am I going to get storytelling in this organisation? Because I know clever people love facts. They love 47 bullet points because 3 are never good enough. Yeah? You do. You just, the more pages I can write on something, the more important this is. Because you're programmed for it, aren't you? That's your whole educational system. Deliver the evidence, support it factually, so headings, clear structure, bullet points, da-da-da-da-da-da. It's not a creative way to write, but it is one that's all part of this. And we've learnt it, and you've become very good at doing that. Not just you, but everybody in the whole sort of clever world. And there is this really interesting thing. I do a lot on creativity as well. And I work with medics, particularly, around this whole concept of how do you get them to envisage the future? What's the future medicines of this world going to be like? But they're incredibly clever people. And what that means is this. They go, well, the answer's this. Why are you wasting my time? Why do we need a half a day, 2 days to work something out? The answer's this. I'm clever, is their story in their head. I know it because I've got all these degrees and all this sort of stuff, and I'm at this senior position, and I'm clever. And clever people come up with the answer like that. Yeah? And I just did, and that's it. And actually, I've got a lot of confirmation in my mind, because I'm very clever, to prove that the answer I've just come up with is the right answer. You go, yeah, but what if? No, shh. Why waste time? Get on, move on. I'm an expert. And what you find is that people who are experts become experts because they know it intensely and they demonstrate that and they support that. But it's very difficult for them to think differently and then talk and express things in a different manner. It just is inherent. So it's a really interesting challenge for universities, and you're going to see some of the stuff. And the interesting thing is, even if you're not like that, your peers are. So you've got to then show them this document before it goes out. And they're going to go, oh, where's all the 47 bullet points? You can't just have one message. I know 37 reasons why people should come to this alumni conference. You've only got one of them on the brochure. And it's not even in an engaging story. So, we are worried what other people think. It's becoming less creative in the way that we do things. The workshop that I'm going to do this afternoon is just trying to break that one up and move that around a little bit. And we just have forgotten to connect emotionally when it comes to our job. Yeah? I really will throw that out, and I really will challenge to ask you, how much of the time do you are willing to connect with somebody, talk to somebody, in your professional capacity at an emotional level? We've been trained in our minds that that's all airy-fairy, arty stuff. Get some facts out there. Yeah? And as much as we desperately go, oh, we don't, you'll just see how much you do. Yeah? How much we do. I was running a workshop with a university, and the idea was I was going to go around all the 6 schools and find... Yes, I know, and this was true. And this was because I was talking to the university. They love it if it's 7. If I just did one, they wouldn't... There's no value. So, I went round each of the schools, talked to each of the deans in the schools, and the idea was to understand the story of each school, and then to see if there was a common thread coming through it. And as I was listening to everybody, I got this feeling. The conversations went a bit like this. Oh, the dean's always busy, he's never there, and I can hardly get to see him, and when I do, I've got 10 minutes, and then I'll write some notes down, and And I said to them, before I even presented the stories, I said, let me share these with you. I said, this is how it feels to me your job is like. And you might say, this is not like my job. But this is how, and they acknowledged at the end it did. I said to them, it's like you're bus drivers. You're not communication managers. And what you're doing is you're trying to get somewhere, but there's chaos on the streets. Within the university, it's huge. And there's all congestions. And people don't quite know where they're going, and I have to wait for somebody else to go before I can go. I can't communicate this because someone else has got to do that, and I've got to check with this, and I've got to do that, and I've got to process this. And I've got to wait for other people to do something. And there's an agreed route that we followed because we've worked out a system and all of these things. And I said, so how does that affect your approach to communicating? Just as a person, when you sit down and look at how you're going to communicate your story on the website, your story in a brochure, your story at a conference, how is that affecting you as bringing something to that session? And I said, you're more like this on the left. I'm not going to talk to you. I'm going to get you there. Yeah? And they forgot to talk. They forgot to ask, where does the person want to go? What do they like? No, I'm just going to get there because I haven't got time. And they all of them just went, you're just so right. We have become like this. So I'm going to, of course you're not like that. Yeah? Of course. But it is interesting, the mindset that you bring to something. At that moment when you say, I'm going to write something now. If you're in that, I've got to get something done by 10 o'clock. Let me tell you now, and if it's 9:30, you won't be thinking, oh, let me just explore a narrative. Let me just think where that could take us. Even though you're going, I know it's the right thing and the most powerful thing to do, I just won't. Right. Don't press. Yep. Okay, right. There's two organizations, two universities that have this concept of infinite possibilities out there. And an overriding story and stuff like that. It's a bit unfair, I know, because clearly I'm pointing this out as this is not how to communicate. And it is an extreme version. But I hope you'll sort of recognize some of the traits in this sort of what I'd call literal communication. Yes, yes.
A new era is beginning for Stony Brook Medicine. No great organization remains at the top of its field without a great deal of introspection and refreshed vision, and with the means to periodically renew itself. Towards that end, becoming the very best in academic medicine, based on our newly crafted strategic plan to provide the goals and milestones, based on SUNY 20...
I just had to cut it. It goes on forever. Now, inherently in there, in those ships that he is setting sail, when he was the admiral of all those ships, thinking, I'm setting sail today, I'm going to do a video, I'm going to tell them all these stories. He's just thought, if I just tell them what I want them to know, they'll be engaged by it, they'll learn by it, they'll remember all the bits, they'll be able to picture it in their minds and digest it and feel it. I'm going to show you another clip now, which is far more of a narrative. And it's the same, it's a different organization, but underneath it is the same idea of infinite possibilities.
I'm from a little town in Norway, small town, quite quiet. Some would probably say boring, but it's home. I finished high school and I went travelling to Greece, and I met a very nice girl from Australia, and I inquired about studying at La Trobe. They told me that mid-year entry was still open, so I just went for it. It was the easiest choice of my life. In 2008, I decided quite spontaneously to go on exchange to Mexico, and that was one of the easiest and best choices of my life again. Of course, I miss my family and friends in Norway, but I love Melbourne and I love Australia. I just think the cafe vibe and the chill atmosphere is awesome. I've got some very close friends here now, and if I ever had to leave, that would be incredibly difficult for me. I'm the president of the surf club at La Trobe. The first time I saw the city of Melbourne was from the top of Westgarth Hill, near where I live. I think that's the best view you'll ever find of the city, and every time I ride past there on my bike, I just think of how lucky I am to be living in this beautiful city.
You Google La Trobe, they do some amazing ones. They have lecturers who do all these little talks and all that sort of stuff, and it's just beautiful little stories that they gather together in an engaging way. I want to share, when I sat down to try and work this out, I equally was mindful that I also, and this was an interesting one, you know, the University of Amsterdam is a pioneering university with a long tradition in support. These are all good, informational, literal statements. But I need a narrative to bring it to life. I need a narrative to make me believe it. Yep. Supporters. So here we've got MIT, and they're using the same literal message, you know, give now, a good action message, but they've got from knowledge to action, and there's a story, and you get to engage, and you're more likely to stay with it. You're more likely to carry on reading. You're more likely to believe it. Here we have MIT's homepage. This is their homepage of a university, right? It's a story. It's a powerful story, but it shows they care. They've got passion. They've got character. They've got individuality. And it wasn't just because of this one instance that happened. They've got a whole archive of these stories around people and characters and personalities and things that build up. I won't show that one. What's interesting, well, I'll press the beginning and then we'll click through. If you notice, stories from LSE, just those words in themselves are magic. They are, from a communication point of view, they're gold dust. And when you start communicating, I don't particularly like it, I find it a bit boring, but it is interesting how they will tell a story and come through.
Doing anything for the first time can be daunting. For most people, going to university is the biggest challenge that I've faced in their lives so far. So how important is having a mentor?
So putting a question there is really important. It makes you think in your own mindset. I won't go. Cambridge, front homepage of their website, the beginning of a narrative, is starting to make you think. It's igniting that thought. Yep. And Caltech, in terms of their whole website, is just stories now. It's just a huge wall of little stories, sound bites to go and engage around. So, for me, stories ignite the imagination. And what they do is they really help you connect with people. They take more time, they take more effort, I absolutely know. But they should be part of your communication mix. And be careful you aren't just overloading the literal ones because it was easy, because it was direct, and because people who are clever are really happy when they see those things appear. I'm going to leave you with this.
Stories. We all spend our lives telling them about this, about that, about people. But some stories are so good, we wish they'd never end. They're so gripping that we'll go without sleep just to see a little bit more. Some stories bring us laughter, and sometimes they bring us tears. But isn't that what a great story does? Makes you feel. Stories that are so powerful.